market with chief conversations to take you places. I'm extremely excited about our two guests here because as an avid runner, an average runner, I've been able to take my running to the next level because of Lindsey and Brad and what they've done with Coach Parry. So if you don't know them, because I didn't get a bio and I've only known them through a social environment, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And when they are disingenuous, I'm going to call them out on that. First of all, we've got Lindsey Parry, who is Comrades coach and is really the face behind it. You've been to the Olympics a number of times. You're a sports enthusiast yourself. You're a dad and a husband and just an all-around good guy. And then Brad, I only know you from awesome podcasts, awesome series, and self-deprecation on your own sports performance, because you and I are in the same place in the crowd. So I'm going to start with you, Brad. Where did you come from and how did you end up with such a cool business partner?
Yeah, Daniel, thanks. I've got quite a strange background. Actually, I studied teaching. I started studying a teaching degree, and while I was at varsity, got involved with the campus radio station. Ended up dropping out of varsity and going full time into radio. And before I could sort of rub the sleep out of my eyes, I had a 20-year radio career. I'd climbed up a ladder and got to the top. I'd worked for some of the biggest radio stations in South Africa. I was working for Supersport at the time as well, and realized my ladder was up against the wrong wall. So was desperate to sort of make a change, and I'd started teaching myself sort of designing websites through WordPress and getting into digital marketing and that. And a logical progression from radio was obviously into podcasting. And I've been podcasting for over 10 years. I think in South Africa, I mean, no one's been podcasting. I mean, there's a handful of people who've been podcasting that long. So really self-taught, done as many courses I could get my hands on, tested, tried things, failed lots, and have slowly sort of figured out how to do things. We're always learning and always trying to grow. So that's the important bit.
And how did you bump into Lindsey? Where did that come together?
Well, that's a long story too. Lindsey and I, funnily enough, actually have known each other for a long, long time. We, at some stage, our primary school journeys crossed in a little town in the middle of nowhere in the Free State. He was at the school for a year, obviously left an impression on me. Years later, I decided I wanted to run Comrades, arrived at a Comrades roadshow, and Lindsey was the coach. And that's where our sort of relationship sort of rekindled, if you'd like. I failed in my first attempt at Comrades, started doing some charity stuff for the Comrades Marathon Association, built them a little fundraising platform that they could use for their charities to raise funds. They then put me on the road shows. So Lindsey and I then for the next few years traveled around the country talking Comrades. I was talking about the charities. He was talking about the coaching. And it was in a little hotel room, I think in Polokwane, that Lindsey and I decided we're going to start a podcast. I did the first few episodes on my Apple iPhone, and the rest is history.
No ways. And Lindsey, that's a good segue into yourself. Many of us know you from Comrades and from a coaching background. How did you get into this? Where was your journey? I know you were in Cape Town for a while. You've traveled around. How did you get into where you are right now?
Yeah, I mean, you know the term confluence. So I sometimes feel like I am where I am from a confluence of rivers. So I obviously grew up in a very running centric house. My mom was also an extremely active sportswoman, even if she wasn't a runner. Played hockey for Zambia, and she was Victrix Ladorum in school. But growing up, my dad was always a runner. He was a Comrades gold medalist. I think his best was a fourth at SA Marathon Champs. He's a 220 marathoner. So that's what I grew up with. I loved running. I've been running with my dad since I was 5 years old. I was fairly successful as a junior runner. And then I went off to university and started studying and kind of was angling down the road of sports, getting into sports management, sports psychology, or some kind of rehab. And those three things kind of went together initially. After a week of the psychology department, I figured if I stayed there for much longer, I might need a psychologist, so I realized that sports psychology wasn't for me. Yeah, in hindsight, who knows? But I was young, and it was easy to make decisions on the fly like that. But then really went into the more into the rehabilitation side of it. Met a really good bunch of guys that I ran with all the way through varsity, being the most experienced of the lot, and studying something in the lines of physiology. I almost became the de facto coach through the 4 years at university. And then I went off and I did my internship, and everywhere I went, I guess that was also from my youth. Everywhere I went, I'd always join the local running club. So pretty much everywhere I was going, join the local running club. It was partially my social entry into the new community, got me running. It always had me using the coaching skills that I had, which I didn't realize that's what they were. And then I opened a private practice and went off to the Western Province Triathlon AGM, and I bumped into a very strong-willed psychologist, Dr. Debbie Alexander, who's head of, I think she's now head of psychology at Stellenbosch University. I probably butchered that, but she was the chairman of Western Province Triathlon at the time, and is now on the IOC for the Paralympic Committee. But we clashed heads, and I told her that her organization doesn't know what they're doing, and she looked at me and said, well, you've got an awful lot to say. Why don't you come and join us if you can do it so well? And so I did. I took her up on her invitation, and she quickly saw my passion and coaching, and I got going with the junior development program, Western Province. And then from there, I kind of learned a simple trick in life. I was young. I didn't have any commitments outside of myself. So the trick I learned was to say yes. So I got a ton of opportunities, and I always just said yes. And that led me to meeting Mike Finch, and Mike Finch introduced me to Comrades, and I became the Comrades coach. And I ended up at a coaching course, and then I bumped into a gentleman by the name of Rocco Meyering, who coached Tatiana Schoonemaker to Olympic gold not so long ago. And he said, come up to Pretoria and see what we do there. And I said, yes. And so I found myself in Pretoria. And it was actually very similar time to that Brad came up to me and was like, hey, do you remember me? And yeah, Brad told you the rest of the story, but that's kind of how we got you.
Brad, I've seen Lindsey. He gets that glint in his eye, and he gets more joy out of watching someone run in the mid or the back of the field and getting them through the Comrades. Is he like that in business as well?
Yeah, he is, and it's across the board. One thing I really like about Lindsey is his enthusiasm. You can have a one-on-one conversation with Lindsey, and it doesn't matter what sphere it is, whether it's running, whether it's triathlon, or whether it's in business. He just breeds this belief in you that you can do anything. On a running side of things, I'll talk to Lindsey and I'll go away from there thinking I'm going to win Comrades. If anybody knows me, I'm definitely nowhere close to winning Comrades. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. So it's just, I don't know what it is about him. He's just, and I think that's also probably why he's so good with the elite athletes he works with. He just has this ability to make you feel like you are the best at whatever you do, which I think is incredible.
And then Lindsey, Brad brings a unique element into this. He's got 100 years of experience of connecting people in conversations. How has that changed the way you interact with people? What has it done blending you two together?
Yeah, look, I think that side of it speaks so much to my personality, because I cannot and don't want to ever micromanage people, and I'm acutely aware of what I can and can't do. And with Brad, what it's done is that I know what qualities he brings. I know what he's good at. I know what he can do. And quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know anybody who can do it better. So it's just really nice to know that we can come together and thrash out ideas, and then Brad can say, we can do this, and this is what I need from you. And I can be completely comfortable in the knowledge that as long as I give Brad the tools, the content, he can make things happen. So from my point of view, it's just, I'm not a natural self-promoter. I never will be. And so with Brad there, I just know that I can feel comfortable in doing the things that I'm good at, and he can use the things that I'm good at to bring the girls to the yard.
To change lives. Yeah. I love that side. But Brad, what does Coach Parry do? And how did you evolve into an app? Because I want to get onto that side quite quickly.
Yeah, Daniel, it's actually quite, I mean, in a nutshell, what we do is we help athletes become better, fitter, faster, and stronger. And it started out with Lindsey as a one-on-one coach. And I think a lot of, and this applies across all spheres of whether it's athletics or business, where you have a job and you've only got 24 hours in a day, you've got 7 days in a week, just like everybody else. And it doesn't matter how good you are at what you do, you still only have 24 hours in a day. And I think Lindsey was in a position where his coaching book was almost as full as it could be. He couldn't take on many more clients, and was he didn't verbalize this to me, but I think he was in a situation where he was thinking of like, how do I make this bigger, or how do I impact more people? And that's where I started. And I'm really grateful to Lindsey for this, because I used Lindsey to learn a lot of the stuff that I've learned. And there was just this implicit trust from Lindsey's point of view that we still joke to this day that I've got access to his social media profiles. So like if he ever goes rogue, I can ruin him. But
we have photographs. We have photographs.
and that's sort of just been incredible to be able to do what we've done over the years. So it started off with, how can we create a little online community where Lindsey can, instead of speaking one-on-one, can speak one-to-many. So we built a little website, and we included a forum, and we tried, that's the first sort of iteration of what we had. And we were charging people then to access the forum to get access to Lindsey. And we had small measure of success, nothing to write home about, but it was a small little win, and it was a proof of concept. From there, we decided, okay, cool. How do we then start delivering training programs to these people on scale that it's not Lindsey physically writing out each one of the training plans? So we then created a whole library of generic training plans, if you'd like, that we used to email. So if somebody bought on our website, we'd email them a PDF, and that's how we delivered those training plans. But sadly, in the world we live in, those training plans were then being distributed through running clubs. And I mean, there was even some guy who created his own app, who was putting our training plans on his app. And we got to a point, it was about in I think it was mid 2017, I was gutful working for the national broadcaster. Lindsey will tell you I'm quite abrasive too. I'm not a real people's person, funnily enough. And I get to a point where I just go, you know what, I've had enough. And we were then looking at either we're going to shut the business down or we need to invest. And we ended up investing, and we hooked up with a developer in New Zealand, ended up using a lot of the tech that he had built already, and made 1 or 2 tweaks. And that's how the Coach Parry app came about. And we hadn't actually even built it. And it was, I think it was in we launched in the October 2018. In the July, I finished my shift on SAFM, and I emailed my boss and I said, thanks a lot, but you better find somebody else, because I'm not coming back on Monday. We didn't have the revenue in place, nothing. All of a sudden, I've got a family, I've got 3 kids, I'm married, I'm unemployed, no runway. We just had to make it work. So I took the leap of faith, and we're still trying to build the airplane as we fly, but it's been a wild ride.
Wow, Brad.
And we
go, Lindsey.
And we took 60 grand in our first month.
Wow.
So, and then it's kind of, so, you know, that was the start. And obviously we've had some good months and some much worse months, but that's how it started.
That's amazing. You know, and I love the fact that you've burnt the boats and you're in it to win it, and you're committed to this. When we see entrepreneurs that are going like this, yeah, right at the beginning, you said say yes to everything. It doesn't sound like that mantra has gone away, Lindsey. You're just going forward and changing lives through the app. How many subscribers do you have today?
Yeah, Brad will have to catch that one. I've got no idea.
So we currently active users on the app, paying users. We're probably sitting with just under 3,000.
Jeez, that's amazing. And that's from zero. That is so cool. Lindsey, you've been coaching for a number of years, and Brad's changed it with this online side and just the thought of touching more lives. Every aspect of our performance is now measured. What do you think is the next big thing for 2022 from a coaching perspective, maybe for your extreme athletes, but also for us middle of the pack athletes?
Look, access to information is really the big change. And I think the trick is always to know what is important information. I had a guy phone me today, and he wants to go for very expensive physiological testing because he wants to know how much fats versus carbs versus proteins he's burning at different speeds. Wow. And I'm like, well, wow. What do you want that information for? So I think there's literally so much that you can figure out. I remember having a conversation with Conrad Stoltz. This is even before I actually thought about going into coaching as a profession many years ago. He was at the top of his triathlon game. He'd already won Xterra World Championships at the stage, and he was telling us how the next big thing in sport is the limiting factor in performance is the amount of sodium you lose when you sweat. Yeah. And I mean, I say that you've probably never even heard that. And the reality is because it didn't turn out to be that important after all. So I think for me, that's actually the important thing. There's lots of things that you can measure. There's lots of things that you can look at, and it's fun to have all those gadgets. But the important thing is having the right people to help you figure out what is important information, what's relevant to you, and what's going to help you to achieve your personal goals. Coaching is becoming more and more accessible.
So people can have access to a coach of your level anywhere in the world. And, they can get the learning. It's almost like going to an English lecture in Cambridge now. We can go for the best coaches in the world because of our connected environment.
That's it, exactly.
But do I need the best coach? I mean, has this data obsession, and I guess this is for you, Brad, has this data obsession taken away from the pure enjoyment of sport, or is it the spice that takes us to the next level?
Yeah, I think each individual is very different. I mean, I think of the athletes on our app and on our platform. There are lots of athletes who are real data geeks who want to know literally everything and why is this block green and why is that block light green? Like it is. That's how granular they get. And then there's guys, and to be honest, I'm not one of those guys when it comes to my training. I mean, I love that on the business side of things and the analytics of what I do. But when it comes to running, I'm on the opposite end of that scale where I just want to go and run. Like I really don't care about all those metrics. So I think you almost get to a point where you have to have it if somebody does want it. Yeah. But it's not the be all and end all, because it can suck the joy out of something you love doing if you do get too granular.
So from a business perspective, it's a ticket to the game. But for a consumer like me, it depends on who we are. Lindsey, you have the spread with your athletes. You need the data in order to get someone to the Olympics or through comrades, and there's different scales.
Or someone who's returning from COVID, or someone who's had serious injury problems or illness and health issues. So, something as simple as heart rate. I mean, so many people track heart rate, they've got no idea what it means. And so we do have some people that write to us and go, yes, you know what, I'm grateful that I'm not running in pain anymore, but I am so bored. And you just need to stick with it for a little bit longer. And then they reap the rewards. And once they get through that, like pure data driven, cannot go harder than this, can't do more than this, have to train on these specific days. When they get through that period and they really are enjoying and loving their running injury free again, then you can go back to a slightly more laissez-faire approach, knowing that you've got a structure, knowing that the structure has worked for you in that it's kept you injury free, but now you don't have to keep such a tight line of it. So I also think that for people, there's a time and a place to dip in and out of these things. And even the people that are up at the top and trying to win, you know, once we've got enough data and we've been through enough training cycles, we really have a pretty good understanding of what works for you and how it works for you. And the final step comes through being completely honest all the time. Because now we've got you a 10,000 meter track title, training like this. Next year, we're going to go back to largely the same stuff, but we're going to make a few little changes and try and drive the performance further. But it's only going to work if you can help me find the line that's not too far.
Because you've got the data now. So it's circling back to what Brad was saying. It's circling back. The technology is there. And I just want to testify. Lindsey got me through my first sky run, my second sky run, my UTCT, because of the program. And I never would have got there without a structured program. So that's a 100K mountain race. And I didn't win it, but I certainly didn't lose it either. And it was amazing for a slightly overweight middle-aged guy. Lindsey, it was great. Brad, you guys have a global brand and a global business. What's the vital technology mix that makes this possible? Talk to me about how you're winning.
Yeah, it's duct tape is probably the biggest thing. Everything's stuck together with duct tape. But
he lies on my show. Come on. I know there's plug and play going on. But
yeah, no, absolutely. But there is also a lot of duct tape. I can tell you that much. And anybody who's sort of pieced things together online will know exactly what I'm talking about. So we use, from a marketing perspective, we use a lot of paid ads, particularly on social media. I think Mark Zuckerberg is by far our highest paid employee. And that has been a game changer for us, because it's really been able to put us in front of people around the world, and helped us grow this business internationally the way it has. So from a marketing perspective, YouTube plays a big part. We also, Facebook, we're putting a big drive this year and a big focus onto YouTube. We're trying to grow our organic reach there. And then just from a tech stack perspective, email marketing drives a huge part of it. We use a tool called ConvertKit. I don't know if you want me to get into the real nitty-gritties of what we use.
It's so you're using email, you're using YouTube, you're using communication channels on all sorts of levels.
Correct.
And then...
And then Homebase, the website's built on WordPress. I mean, there's really nothing fancy behind the website. The actual training app itself is some custom stuff that was done in New Zealand that we're using. But it's literally, I mean, if it still blows my mind that we've got the size business we have, and if I think about what we've actually invested financially into building our own tools, it's amazing how, I mean, there's this whole big no-code movement at the moment, and building these sorts of things that anyone, and the playing field is leveled. I mean, that for me is probably the most exciting thing, that a kid from the Free State, me, who is a varsity dropout, can teach himself these tools to build a business that is literally impacting lives around the world.
No way.
Just it blows my mind. And there's some kid in his bedroom at the moment learning skills that is, it's going to change the world, and that you can do that from your bedroom, which is cool.
There's just a mic drop moment there for me. The playing field is level, and there's no technological reason why we can't be doing this. And you've bought yourself your freedom now, and I know there's still a long way to go, and the business is still expanding. What is the biggest challenge that you see running an online business like this based from South Africa today, in your opinion? And then Lindsey, I'd love it from your side, being the face of the organization.
Yeah, I think for us, from a coaching perspective, obviously something like COVID's had a massive impact on what to do, because our business is very much built around events. So outside factors like that do play a massive. I mean, nobody saw that coming. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. And I think things have fundamentally shifted the way we've had to sort of think out of the box. But it's always changing. And I think that's what I love about the online space. Is there are always going to be threats. I mean, the Facebook iOS 14 updates with the privacy over the last sort of year has been a massive thing, a thorn in our side, because that's what we use to drive. So we've had to figure out different ways. And I think there are always going to be those sorts of threats. But as soon as you think you've got it made and you sit back and go, you know what, we're here, we've arrived, that's probably your biggest threat, is complacency. You've just got to keep moving, and you've got to keep iterating and figuring out different ways.
So reinventing.
Exactly the same.
And
sort
staying
of thing.
fresh and relevant. Lindsey,
Correct.
what's your answer to that? What's the biggest challenge of being an organization based in SA servicing the world?
Look, time zones are an issue. Because we do live, we live in a consumer culture in that people can consume now. They can turn on Netflix, they can watch this, they can do whatever. So time zones create a time lapse essentially. And so there can be an expectation of instant or a need for instant information. So I think for me, that's kind of the one side of it. And then there's always something that needs to be done. And it's great having the freedom to know that if you want to go and watch your daughter in a swimming pool, you can go and do it. But on the other side of that coin is also this knowing that there's no one else to get certain things done. And so you just have to be a little bit careful about when and how you get those things done. So I think for me, that's always been the biggest challenge in terms of running my own business. And as much as I'm a big fan of saying yes, I think that's sometimes where we are now. I don't like saying no, but we need to say, can I get back to you so we can have a look and see how it fits into the mix? Because especially during COVID, when we really were having to look at different angles and switch things around, there was a tendency to want to be involved in every aspect of the local running scene, for example. And there are things that aren't in our wheelhouse, that shouldn't be in our wheelhouse. And so that's the other challenge, is it's how do you make, that's why I hate saying no, is how do you know you're making the right decision when you tell someone, no thanks, we don't need your money. I mean, I need your money, but not at the expense of all the other things that we do.
How do you stay true to your true north is always something when we're growing. And I think Coach Parry is now at an interesting level where you're going from a small Brad and Lindsey into a bigger organization. And how do you use technology to help with the internal operations of Coach Parry? I mean, you're making videos, you putting stuff on the internet. Where's technology in that with your own staff?
Yeah, we live in Google Drive. That's for sure. That's probably one of the biggest tools we use. Google Drive and Google Sheets are the two big things that we've just got processes that everybody sort of knows that when this gets done, then you need to do this. So it's probably it's Google Drive, Google Sheets, and WhatsApp. We don't use Slack or anything like that. Everything's done across those three, and that's how we coordinate. It's quite interesting. I mean, our team's grown. I mean, when COVID hit, I think I don't even think Lindsey was full-time in the business yet. I was probably the only full-time employee. And since then, we've got quite a few full-time employees now. Everyone's been remote, which has been pretty cool. We've actually just hired someone, and this is the first in office. She's working out of my home office. So it's been interesting. We've always been, I mean, Lindsey, I've been living in Cape Town for a number of years. I recently moved back to Joburg, and it's just been part of what we do. There's never been this thing that it's actually worked quite well, I think, and it hasn't actually been a thoughtful process. It was just, that's how it's worked for us over the years, and we've sort of just tried to make it better as we go.
Lindsey, And your answer to that, how do you keep the culture going? How do you keep the Coach Parry culture if you're all remote?
Yeah, so look, we do use Zoom a fair amount, and fortunately, up until now, although we are spread out around Joburg, Ukaraleni, Pretoria.
Okay.
And so we try to create, I mean, firstly, I think if we take just one quick step back, is that we employed Shona Hendricks full time in the business, as she is our head of athlete success, and one of her main roles is to help Brad and my look squirrel and keep refocusing it and keeping us on track, and helping us.
Lindsey,
I said, like,
Lindsey says that she's head of athlete success. She's actually head cat gatherer. That's what she is. That's what
so I said it's sometimes hard to know what to say yes and no to, and that's part of what Shona is on board for. In terms of if you had to give it a broader business type of category, she would essentially be our business manager. She's there to help us drive the new business, and decide and keep us to our core values, and keep us on track with doing the things that we do well, so that we don't let that stuff drop while we're off on a tangent. So she's fairly integral to the business, and one of her roles is then to create these opportunities for the team building, the team culture. So we try to get together every 2 months, where we'll do a presentation to upskill and educate the employees about the things that we're doing in the business, or if there's a like when we started going into the looking after athletes that are going through menopause, when we decided that was a market that we could really get into and help with, we then do a whole lot of training with the team to give them the skills to know what they're going to be dealing with, and we'll try and incorporate something like a team golf day, or hitting at the driving range, or something else. But we know we're never going to have an office. So we try and create these couple of opportunities where we do have the in-house culture building stuff, and then in between that, we really just encourage each other to stay in touch via WhatsApp, Zoom, and try and have as much interaction as we can.
Awesome. Brad, as the head of technology and the person who's responsible for pulling everything together, how do you self-educate? Where do you find the time to keep innovating like this?
Daniel, I love podcasts. I mean, obviously coming from a radio background, I don't know when last I listened to radio. Even when I was on radio, I stopped listening to radio. I always used to joke that if I was doing the afternoon drive on a national radio station, if you had to pull me aside, hold a gun to my head, says who does the breakfast show on the station you work on, I would have told you to pull the trigger, because I don't know. And that was just a conscious choice that I decided that podcasts, you could go and find a podcast on anything. If you want to learn something, there's a podcast on it. And I just used the downtime that I had in my car commuting. If I was going on a walk, running, just listen to as many podcasts as I can. With me working from home now, obviously I'm not commuting, so that time is a bit less. But I've also taught myself to listen on triple speed. So that will change
Give me that
life.
So you listen on triple speed.
Yeah. So it takes some getting used to, but you can build it up slowly. And there's podcast players out there that allow you to do that. Some podcasts I can go 3, some I have to go 2.5, but you can consume 2-3 times the amount of content that you normally would. And that's been an absolute game changer for me. And it's the same with audiobooks. If I love reading, but I just don't get time to sit down and read. So if there is something that I want to read, I'll download the audiobook of Audible, also crank up the speed and get through it as quickly as I can.
So give me 4 must-go-to podcasts or audiobooks for our listeners.
One of the favorite podcasts I listen to, it's got the cheesiest name on the planet. It's called My First Million, and it's 2 guys who just shoot the breeze and talk about ideas, what's going on in the world today. It's either your thing or it's not. Okay. But I absolutely love it, and that's probably go-to number 1. when I got started, I used to listen to a lot of the internet marketer type guys. I've moved slightly away from that because I've probably moved on from a skills perspective. But the likes of Pat Flynn, Rick Mulready is another guy who's I've learned a hell of a lot from. Those two are probably really good. And
Frank Kearns, don't leave him out.
Yeah, Frank Kearns, another one, particularly from the marketing side of things. Crazy story and just an absolute genius in what he does. And then I'm trying to think from a book perspective. I think all of us as a team love 0 to 1. And I think that is been a really big sort of, or had a really big influence on the way we think as a business, I think.
Lindsey,
we can thank Haley for that one. She's the one who introduced us to 0 to 1.
So Haley is Lindsey's wife, and I'm hoping to get her onto this podcast as well at some stage. Lindsey, I know you listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'd love to hear your top 3. But actually, I want to know who's your mentor, industry role model, and why.
So I've had a lot, to be honest. I've had a lot. But if you had to ask me who's had the biggest influence on my coaching philosophy, it would be Arthur Lydiard.
Arthur who?
Arthur Lydiard. If I see a book or about him, written by him, if he's written a forward in a book, I'll get that book. So
why is that?
He was probably the best coach in the world in the 1960s and 70s.
Okay.
And quite honestly, the very foundational principles of performance, I really don't feel have moved very far from him. And he had such an outstanding understanding of human physiology with no training in human physiology.
Wow.
So the way that he explains stuff is just, the fact that he got it and there wasn't information for him to understand what he was getting, that's what I really love about him. Wow. He's like, people talk about what's a genius, and I think sometimes that is a genius. Like he would say things about what, in his opinion, the human body was doing, but he wouldn't know. He wouldn't know what's happening inside you, rather how it's happening inside you better. He knew what, he didn't know how.
Yeah.
And I used to find that really fascinating.
Sure.
Yeah, and then obviously, I mean, I'm the opposite to Brad. I don't like listening. I like reading. So, and not only from our own sport. At the moment, I'm busy reading about Roger Federer. And there's just, in every sport and every coach, there was a book on Heineke Meyer. Probably that's the one book I've almost learned the most about dealing with people, is reading Heineke Meyer's book, or someone wrote about Heineke, should I say. So, yeah, but if I have to peg an individual, it's Arthur Lydiard. Obviously, I've given a ton of what I do. And the most recent person that really resonates with me from a fundamental physiological point of view is a guy by the name of Dr. Phil Maffetone. But yeah, I'm not rigid in my application of what anyone who's worked with me will know, that Dr. Phil Maffetone, I certainly don't advocate only running at very low intensities, but when you are, he's got very sound principles of what and how.
So this is a very left field question. I know you've got a lot of clients in the US. You've got a lot of clients in South Africa. You span the globe. Why is sport so important, Lindsey? Why are adults, I mean, I'm closer to 50 than 20, and I want to go and run in the mountains. Why this obsession with sport?
On a pure, almost prehistoric level, it's because we are wired to require certain hormones to feel good. And sport and exercise and and we all need a slightly different mix of it, and we need it in a different way, which is why some people thrive in a team sport environment, and some people will thrive an individual endurance sport environment, and other people will thrive in a very high, explosive type of environment. At the end of that tunnel, we all are after a mix of testosterone, endorphins, adrenaline, and that is what we chase as a species. That's why people hurl themselves out of airplanes. But that is it at its fundamental level. And the wide variety of sport is because we require these things in a slightly different mix.
Awesome. Brad, with this thick blanket of technology that you've now rolled out, what's been the hardest thing that you didn't anticipate about running a business of this nature? I mean, you've been podcasting for a long time. You've been talking to people for a long time. So communication's easy for you. What did you struggle with in the last kind of 4 years?
You're going to laugh at this, and it's people. It's actually the people using the technology. Like and that's where I struggle, because like I'll put something together and think this is really simple. And then I put it in front of someone and they just don't get it. And it's been able to figure that out so that we can simplify it so that it doesn't matter how tech savvy or not savvy you are, you can use it. So that's been a huge learning curve for me. I mean, initially it was like, okay, cool. How do we get this little piece of tech to work? Or how do we get this thing speaking to that thing? But at the end of the day, it's the users in my mind that are the hardest to actually get right. It's because something makes total logical sense in my head. Definitely doesn't make sense to everyone else. That's for sure.
If you could speak to Brad of 2 years ago, what advice would you have for them 2 years ago?
I think it's that you know enough, that people often need conditions to be perfect. They need to learn the next thing in order to go. It's never going to be perfect. You're never going to know everything, but you know enough. And enough today, it may not be enough in 5 years' time, but waiting till you know something that's enough in 5 years' time is not going to get you closer to your goal of whatever it is you want to do. And that has been a big thing. It's never going to be perfect. You got to get it good enough and ship it. That's been probably the biggest thing, is just get it out there. If it tanks, it tanks. So what? At least you fail fast. That's the goal.
That is just a moment for all of our audience. Tony, a friend of mine, says, get going, then get good. Yep. And unfortunately, a lot of people with these dreams want to get good before they get going. And that's why their dreams stay at the braai. They never get out there. I think that's such sound advice that you would give yourself, Brad. I really like that. Lindsey, with all of this technology in your life, being who you are, what aspect of your job remains the same in spite of this, in spite of the technology? What's the same for a coach?
Our fundamental goal to help people be better than they were when they started.
Okay.
That's never going to change. And I think and I think if that's always at the core of our business, then all the other stuff becomes about how we can help more people to be better than they are.
Awesome. Yeah. I love that. What's the next milestone? I'll ask it to both of you. You guys are at a really interesting juncture. What's the next big kick for Coach Parry? We'll start with you, Linz.
Look, I think you might find I'm stealing Brad's answer here, but for me, I think we're just about getting to 3 years now as a sustainable business, and our next step is to create enough avenues that revenue can, in essence, start to take care of itself in some ways. So I guess really to get the organic reach to a point where we can have enough people filtering through the system that our focus can really be on delivering quality and keeping those people in, so that we don't have to keep driving so hard to pour new people in the top.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's really nice. I wish that for you. I wish it comes sooner rather than later. Brad, as we come to the end of our time, I've got a few more questions, but one more for you, which is, what is a question that you would have liked me to have asked you?
Gee, that is a great question. That's a. Geez, Daniel, can I sleep on that and get back to you?
No, you're on the spot, dude. You're on the spot.
Yeah, I think also this is probably it'll be counseling for Lindsey and I. Is like, where do we see this thing in 10 years time? Like, where do we? And I think our views are quite different. I mean, Lindsey and I have often had divergent ideas on where we want to take this thing. At times, Lindsey's been very. I just want to have a comfortable life.
Altruistic, yeah.
Yeah, and I've always been super ambitious. I'm a dreamer. I want to see how big we can build this thing. I think I want to have a ginormous business, not necessarily from an employee's perspective, but I want millions of people using this app on a daily basis and changing lives. I think that's part of it. But I want to see how big we can build this thing.
So you want to be like Adam, step back. I don't know how big this thing's going to get.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. That's really good. You and I share that. I think Lindsey is more about changing hearts and minds, and that's why if you both agreed, you wouldn't be needed around the boardroom table. Lindsey, for a closing comment, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a business and buy their freedom the way you and Brad and the team have done? What advice would you give them, apart from saying yes to everything when you've got no risk?
Yeah, so this is something I absolutely learned from Brad, and I probably took the step 2 years too late, to be honest. So I think it's slightly different to Brad's. I know enough. The reality is that the fear of not being able to provide keeps you stuck in old habits and in an environment that doesn't give you the freedom to create what you need to create. And if you can find a way to shake the fear off, the opportunities that suddenly come from the freedom that you have in your mind and the extra time that you've got to spend inside your own mind just create all sorts of opportunities. I mean, I can tell you now that we've never looked back. Brad certainly hasn't looked back from walking out of that radio studio, and I have not looked back from walking away from my job.
You know, Lindsey, we've spent time talking about this, and I really enjoy the journey you guys have taken on, and more, I think the humility with which you do it, because you do change lives. And what you guys do is you take people from this inability to do something, they have no self-belief, whether it's from couch to a 5K or to running an ultra marathon event. And not many of us get to do that in our jobs. And I just want to honor you for that. It's an amazing thing that you've done. My last question for you, Brad, before I wrap up: are you lining up for Comrades this year? And am I going to be beating you?
The second part of that question is absolutely.
I've got my bill and I'm going for it. Come on.
I couldn't move that fast if you threw me down a mine shaft, Daniel. So the short answer is yes, you definitely will beat me. The long answer to the first part of that question is no, I won't be lining up for Comrades 2022, but I am on a bit of a comeback. One of the challenges of building our own business, I actually put a video out on our YouTube channel about this about a week and a half ago, is my background obviously was super heavy, lost a lot of weight, ran Comrades, done a few of them, done Ironman. And in the last 5 years in building this business, I've spent more time in my office than I would have liked and less time out on the road training. So I've picked up a hell of a lot of the weight that I've lost, not training as much as I want to. And picking up some health issues because of it. So I'm on a mission to get my backside back in gear. I've set a goal to run the Cape Town Marathon end of this year. So that'll be my comeback marathon. And I am desperate to run another Comrades, Daniel. Awesome. One thing I have learned is Comrades is going nowhere. It'll be there next year. It'll be there the year after. There's no point forcing it and then getting injured and then you're back to square one again. So I know a pretty good coach, thankfully, and we're working slowly towards it.
You know, for all of our international guests, Comrades Marathon is, if you ever want to visit South Africa and if you ever want to do an ultra marathon, I can highly recommend it. It's the one day of the year that reminds me why I live in South Africa and why I have such a passion for it. And with the Coach Parry app, we can get you through it, because it's well worth doing. So I just want to say to you, Brad, anytime that you're there, I would love to be there with you on any of those runs if you want to go for a quick trot. Lindsey, thank you for your time. I know how busy you guys are. 1 million YouTube views. Where can people get hold of you before I let you go? If we Google Coach Parry, they can find you. Where else? What are the other forums we want to get you to?
Yeah, we're pretty much everywhere. So if you Google Coach Parry, you'll find us. But we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Insta. We're trying to get Lindsey onto TikTok. No, let me rephrase that. Lindsey's desperate to get onto TikTok. I said to him, I don't have the bandwidth to figure it out. So off you go. But we're pretty much everywhere else. And awesome. Yeah, we put out regular content on our podcasts. YouTube, we're putting out 2 videos a week. There's some really cool stuff going there. So yeah, definitely check it out.
Thank you so much, Brad, Lindsey. Thank you. Have an amazing day further, and just every success to you guys. From our side at Rocket, I want to say thank you. Have an amazing day, and until next time.